Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Preferences and Choices webinar. My name is Bimi Shakuni. I'm the Senior Project Manager for the refurbishment at Lancaster West, and I will be chairing this meeting. I'd like to thank you all for joining us to discuss the refurbishment of Barandon Walk, Testerton Walk, and Hurstway Walk. Next slide, please. I'm going to start off with a quick introduction of the Lancaster West team working on the external refurbishment of your blocks. That's the outside of the buildings themselves and the communal spaces. Many of you will have met James Caspel, Lancaster West Estate Neighbourhood Director, and also here today is Andros Luizo, who is Head of Refurbishment Design and Delivery. Myself, Bumi Shikuni, Senior Project Manager, Terry McDermott, M&E Project Manager, Maria Martinez, Refurbishment Project Support Officer, Aleke Yelamanchili, Assistant Project Manager, as well as Janet Hall, the Heat Network Engagement Manager. Next slide, please. So in terms of the agenda, the meeting will last about an hour. I've done the introduction. James Caspel will give a brief introduction and an update on the refurbishment site-wide, as well as the Walkways co-design timeline. And you'll also run through the feedback from the initial design ideas phase and how that's informed the development of the technical design. We will look at the improvement works to your homes, both the essential fire safety works and the thermal improvement works, which cover the sprinklers, the ventilation system, the windows, insulation strategies, as well as the testing lighting pilot, as well as the main refurb pilot. And in addition to that, we'll be talking about the improvement works to the exterior of your blocks, the roofs, the AOV improvement works, the communal areas, the refuse and waste management strategy, and how that's going to, and how we're going to be maximizing fire safety. So looking at the fire strategy for the 3 blocks. We will conclude with next steps for the refurbishment and how you can fill out the Emerging Preferences and Choices survey for your feedback. So without further ado, I will hand over to Lancaster West Neighbourhood Director James Caspel.
Thank you, Bumi. Next slide, please, Maria. So today is all about giving you as much information as you need to make the choices available to you concerning your windows, balconies, external facade and wall insulation, and your front door. So we'll be asking every single household, indeed every person in every single household, to take the opportunity to fill in the phase 2 refurbishment surveys. This is your refurb and this is your choice. So we'll be setting out, as Bumi said, all the available choices that we've been able to establish are technically feasible and that we have the funding secured to deliver. But I'm first going to give a bit of a recap of the initial design ideas phase and what you told us when we last spoke to you. Next slide, please, Maria. So in terms of the co-design timeline, it was last spring when we started the first phase, which was capturing the initial design ideas for refurbishment works. At that point, we'd secured grant funding from all levels of government to be able to deliver on the promise of a 21st century model estate. So we asked you for your views on things like different types of wall insulation, different types of glazing and ventilation. We've been working to process that feedback, looking at what is technically feasible and having specific engagement on issues like maximising fire safety and the roof works, which are due to commence in January 2023. So we're now in the emerging preferences and choices phase. There'll be a range of events and drop-ins, including at the 411 Testerton Walk pilot, as well as our showroom at Unit 29 in Baseline Studios. And so through October and November 2022, we're going to be speaking to as many people as we can to capture your views to shape your refurbishment. Next slide, please, Maria. So in terms of the initial design ideas events that we held last year, you told us a number of things. Nearly 9 out of 10 residents supported triple glazing over any other form, and just over half of all residents prefer aluminium frames. And specifically, we had a lot of verbatim feedback that said that people would like aluminium frames very similar to what we've got at the moment, the original Walkways windows, which are in most of the homes today. But we are going to review that and give you the option to look at other choices as well. So we've used this feedback to decide the best window types available. We've installed them at 411, so you can come along and have a look and a feel in terms of different operating mechanisms and colours. And we're aiming through the second phase to have over 50% of all households on the walkways take part in the co-design process. Next slide, please, Maria. So in terms of wall insulation, we presented to you last year options around external wall insulation, options around internal wall insulation, and since then we've started to explore and are currently still confirming what will provide the maximum benefit in terms of energy performance, and at this time especially in terms of reducing your energy bills. Now, residents did tell us that they preferred, if anything, external wall insulation. People were open to internal wall insulation, but with the external wall insulation, we definitely had feedback around not removing the footprint of your properties, so which internal wall insulation tends to do, because it obviously will take up space in your home. And also with external wall insulation, it's often easier and more robust to fit in a way that lasts, and it also gives us the opportunity to improve the visual and texture of the external facade. And what we're going to hear later on is some of the options that are going to be available, and you can come along to Unit 29 Baseline Studio Showroom to actually see and feel what some of those EWI options look like. So we're continuing to look at the different types of insulation, but for now what we're going to ask is what your preferences are in terms of the colour, the texture available, and also in terms of whether you'd like to see a minimum amount or a maximum amount, and we'll be talking to you about that a little bit later on. Next slide, Maria. So at the Maximising Fire Safety drop-in event, which we held a few months ago, we talked about the options to install sprinklers into every home. It's a key part of our fire strategy to install sprinklers in every Walkways properties. And what we are also doing is looking to ensure that in terms of the other work that we do around external wall insulation, in terms of ventilation, that as well helps to improve safety in your home, and looking at A1 and A2 non-combustible materials wherever possible, so well beyond building regulations. With regards to sprinklers especially, 7 out of 10 residents were positive about having them installed, but we did have a number of concerns expressed to us about disruption to the home, impact on ceiling height and so on. So we're going to share with you some of the viable options, which will mean that some of those concerns will be mitigated. Residents are also positive about replacing the windows that face into the atria, the communal spaces, with fire-resistant glazing, which will mean we can eventually do away with the fire curtains, which a lot of people gave us quite strong negative feedback against. So we're going to share with you what the options are there to improve that as well. Next slide, please, Maria. In terms of your communal spaces as well, in summer 2021, we asked what you liked about your communal spaces and what you disliked. People obviously like the wide walkways, like the high ceilings, and a sense of privacy from the outside neighbourhood. But there are a lot of dislikes as well around cleanliness and colours, the way the stairwells are configured, the level of noise, security, and a range of other concerns as well. And in terms of the pilot communal area upgrade that Bumi and Aleki will talk about later on, we are going to be exploring options at phase 3, which will hopefully be concluded in early spring next year, when we're looking to lock down the final detailed designs. Hopefully we'll be able to provide options at that point in terms of what your communal spaces could look like. But for now, we're looking for feedback on the pilot proposal. I'll hand back now to Bumi for the next section.
Thank you, James. Next slide, please. So yes, we made the decision to accelerate the roof improvement works for the walkways due to funding timescale. The roof improvement works provides an opportunity to improve the look of your blocks, improve thermal performance, fire safety, and of course, eliminate long-term issues with leaks and reduce maintenance needs. The AOV leaks is an issue, particularly in Barandon Walk. The existing AOVs are beyond their usable life and are currently jammed open, and we all know what that means in terms of water coming in, and particularly in the winter months. So phase 2 engagement for the roof works was held in May of this year. Residents were invited to drop in at NKRC. We talked about the AOV and roof light frames, the color and the look and the finish. We talked about parapet railings. We also talked about the works to, the terraces, which is the penultimate level, as well as the terrace screens, which divide the terrace space, as well as, the pergola structure and the material. Next slide, please. So of the 283 eligible properties across all 3 blocks, 81 flats, which is 29% of flats, completed the survey for the roof works. And for the roof railing color, the majority of residents preferred dark grey. The atrium roof light color, the majority preferred white, which is similar to what's currently there at the moment. For the atrium roof light gable glazing, the clear preference was clear glass as opposed to frosted glass. The clear glass option obviously provides a clear view of the sky from within the atrial space. And in addition to the thermal improvement of the roof deck and the replacement of the roof lights, the pergola structure and screen on all terraces, will be replaced as part of the works, as I mentioned earlier. For the pergola, 3 options were presented. And the majority preferred a covered option to provide shelter from the rain and sun, which is quite nice if you're using your terrace space and you're sitting there enjoying a coffee. So 3 options were presented, also presented for the replacement screen, which divides the terrace space, and the majority of residents prefer the diagonal pattern option in a dark grey colour. So we now have planning permission for the works. We've tendered the project. The tender return date is sort of 21st of October, which is today, the day of the presentation, and there will be a 2-week evaluation process, period, which will involve tender scoring with residents. So we've sent out a letter to all residents asking if anyone would like to participate in the tender scoring. So please contact me using via the Lancaster West email address. So the anticipated start for the works is looking like January of next year, but we'll be writing to all residents, just notifying you before the actual works start to sign, and there will be an opportunity to meet the contractor before the commencement of the works. Next slide, please. So alongside improving fire safety of your homes, a key focus of the refurbishment design for your blocks has been retrofit measures to improve the thermal efficiency and energy performance. Next slide. So measures the design team have looked at include insulating the roofs, as I mentioned earlier, the roof improvement works, and upgrading the roof lights, which will help reduce heat loss and heat gain. The systems under review all use A1 rated non-combustible insulation. And as I said, it's been fast tracked. We've tendered. We're looking to start the works early next year for the roof works. And then the other energy performance, energy and thermal improvement measure we're looking at for the walkways is the replacement of windows and doors, changing these to airtight triple glazed frames offer a significant thermal improvement. So it's really, we know that the replacement of windows and doors is a priority for residents in the walkways. So that's top on our list as well. There's also the upgrade works to the balcony decks with new drainage, insulation, rainwater goods, which will reduce heat loss from the internal space below the balconies. And also that would help resolve the recurring leaks, the balcony leaks. And wall insulation is also a key part of the thermal improvement works. Improving thermal envelope either by insulating from within, which is the internal wall insulation James mentioned earlier, or wrap the exterior facades of the blocks with external wall insulation. So James is going to go through this in more detail later on in the presentation. And then there's the floors. So all 3 blocks sit above unheated garages and access roads at basement level. So to reduce it transfer or heat loss down to these unheated spaces, the proposal is to install insulation to the underside of the exposed garage ceilings and parts of the garage walls. Next slide. So in terms of essential works, we will need to carry out essential works to your homes. We are looking to, improve thermal performance of the blocks, help reduce heating bills. So the replacement of the external windows and doors is essential. So they will be replaced with high performance windows which would contribute to improving the energy performance of the blocks. And then there's a fire safety works, which is obviously very, that's very important work that needs to be carried out. There's the fire doors, the atrium fire rated windows. There's also sprinklers. So to improve fire safety, sprinklers, new doors we've already started installing, and the atrium fire rated windows is obviously the fixed glazing to the communal spaces. Currently, those windows that face into the communal spaces are openable, they're sliding. We will need to replace those with fire rated fixed glazing. And also installing sprinklers will likely result in dropped ceilings, which I would go into later on in the presentation. The other parts, another essential work that needs to be carried out is mechanical ventilation. Mechanical ventilation will obviously be required as, the atrium windows will now be fixed. So we will, to improve the ventilation of the homes, we will be installing mechanical ventilation in all of the flats. So mechanical ventilation system, could be installed with the sprinklers. So both sprinklers and MVHR ductwork could be incorporated in the same drop ceiling. There's also balcony improvement works. Many balconies leak into flats below, as I mentioned earlier. So some existing pavers also have traces of asbestos in them, which need replacing. And those balcony works will help improve thermal envelope, the thermal performance of the blocks. And there's also wall insulation. So there are different ways to do this. As I mentioned earlier, there's inter-wall insulation, external wall insulation. So we will go into that in more detail later on in the presentation. There's also electrical works, which would need upgrading, and new heating and hot water network as well. So that includes new radiators, pipe work, which will be installed throughout all homes. Next slide, please. So yes, in terms of the sprinklers, I mentioned earlier that sprinklers is obviously an essential fire safety work that needs to be carried out. And we've evaluated different ways of installing the sprinklers. One of the feedback from the recent fire safety engagement was residents raised concerns about the dropped ceilings, and some residents have tall furniture. What does a dropped ceiling mean for the tall furniture, and also pendant lights? So we've looked at a ceiling mounted option, which is recessed into the dropped ceiling with pipework behind it. And then there's also a wall-mounted recessed wall-mounted option where the sprinklers is recessed into a boxing at high level in the rooms. So in terms of the pros and cons, let's look at the ceiling mounted first. So in terms of pros, we're going to have concealed fittings, which ensures a discreet and tidy finish. And also the sprinklers are going to be located in the center of the room, which maximizes the spread of water if the sprinklers are activated, which is great. It's better from a fire safety point of view. And also there's a good reach to all parts of the room, and it's less open to obstruction. The cons of that is obviously the drop ceiling that I mentioned earlier about the impact on existing furniture, what that means if you have like pendant lights in your flat, if you prefer pendant lights to, spotlights. The pros and cons for the wall-mounted option. So pros, it doesn't require a full ceiling drop. It's just a bulkhead and, at high level in the corner. And the cons of that, the disadvantage is, the spread, obviously, because the sprinkler is mounted into a boxing at high level on the wall. The reach and the spread is not as great as a ceiling mounted option. And also tall furniture could obstruct the sprinkler, which is something we do not want. There are different ways of doing this. The fire safety is still great for both options, and we'll be asking residents to tell us what they think. So this is going to be part of the survey we're going to be sending out to residents. Next slide, please. So I will now hand over to Terry, M&E project manager, who's going to present the mechanical ventilation systems we've explored and how they could be installed in your flats. Terry.
Thanks, Fumi. So your homes and new ceilings has been obviously a question that everyone's asked about. As a minimum, the drop ceiling will generally need to be dropped 117.5 millimetres to accommodate sprinklers and lighting and MVHRs. We're looking to minimise the depth of the drop ceiling to ensure the ceiling height remains as generous as possible, and are trying options in the pilots as in Testerton, which we are going to be doing an open day very shortly. So please come down and have a look and you can see it for yourself. Additional space will be needed depending on the chosen ventilation, which is the MVHR, ducting and cooling. The following are minimum guides, MVHR. So we've done 3 types on the pilots, and you can see the pictures below. Plastic ductwork is 137.5 millimetres. The metal ductwork is what our preference is because it's obviously fire rated higher than the plastic. And then MVHR with future proofing for cooling, which be a deeper depth of 147.5 millimetres. Both plastic and metal ductwork are safe, however. Metal ductwork has an additional fire safety benefit as it's A1 rated non-combustible material. Can you move to the next slide, please, Maria? So your home's combating overheating. Again, this is where we've engaged and we've listened to you guys. We know that many of your homes overheat, and we are looking at ways to address this issue. We've monitored a selection of homes throughout the summer, and we are also using computer software tools to develop solutions to keep all of your homes cooling during the warmer months of the year. There are a number of ways we can reduce overheating, so reducing solar gain by replacing the windows, as Bumi has said, with glass, which is high efficiency, reflective. We've also improving the ventilation, which follows into the MVHRs. The design of the new windows aim to maximise natural ventilation in a safe and secure way. The new mechanical ventilation systems will also help by improving the ventilation of homes, as well as bringing fresh air inside. Adding insulation by insulation of walls and roof. Heat gains from outside can be reduced, replacing the existing heating pipework with new insulation pipes will also help to reduce internal heat gains in the warm weather. Adding cooling, this is again adding mechanical cooling with the MVHR units can be added to some of the worst affected homes. And as we're installing these, we are future-proofing the mechanical ventilation so that we can add the cooling later on down the line, which is definitely a positive for the estate. Maria, can you move to the next slide, please? So ventilation, keeping your home well ventilated is important to keep the air in your home fresh and healthy by reducing indoor air population. The key benefit of the MVHR system is that the recovery heat from stale air from your kitchen and from your bathroom before it's extracted. This means MVHRs can reduce your fuel bills because it's more efficiency. However, the MVHR kit is larger, which will impact storage space. It also requires ceiling vents in all rooms. We have in the smaller properties, in the 1-bedrooms, we have been able to install the MVHR in the ceilings, so there's less impact. In the large properties, they would require a store cupboard to go in, but they are hidden and they are not on show. So just the pros and cons: MVHR mechanical ventilation with heat recovery. The pros: reduce the cost of heating as the kit recovers heat from extracted stale air, improves internal air quality and reduces poor population by filtering incoming air. Cons: kit reducing the internal storage space that I've said, requires regular maintenance, changing the filters. The filters need to be changed twice a year and also sort of cleaned every 3 months, but it's very easy to do. MEV, mechanical extract ventilation, which is another pilot that we've done. Pros: does not impact on storage space. low maintenance, does not require changing filters, simple system to use. The cons, it does not reduce the cost of the heating, air quality is not improved as the air is not filtered. Can we move to the next slide, please, Maria? So as I've said, we've done a number of pilots and we're collating data on all viable options across all estates and all the different types of properties. The emerging information that we've got is that the MVHR is definitely the most efficient and would be our preference to install across all properties. Can you move to the next slide, please, Marion? So your home's ventilation, as we've discussed, the MVHR, also MEV and extract fans. As you can see on this slide, that the savings across the whole year would be around about £240 on your bills for electricity and your heating. Obviously, with the current climate, with the electricity and gas issues, that will change over the coming years. But the MVHR will definitely improve the situation for you. Maria, can you move on to the next slide, please? So here's a diagram of the ventilation and the likely locations. So we've used Brink Flare 325 option and Zender Combi Flare as well, which are the top models on the market at the moment. And provides the best situations for ourselves and the properties we've got. The MVHR ventilation machine will need to be located within an existing storage cupboard, like we've said, which means it will reduce overall storage space within your home. Again, that's not on show, but it is tucked away, depending on the size of the unit. Above is the example of MVHR in the Testerton pilot marked in the blue. As you can see, it's in one of the storage cupboards. So nice and tidy and tucked away. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Terry. Next slide, please, Maria. So in terms of the windows, we've looked at different options. We've looked at aluminium windows, we've looked at composite windows, following feedback from phase one. We've explored different windows with different opening mechanisms, the outward opening, inward opening, tilt and turn, slide in, and the different preferences indicated by indicated in residents' feedback in phase one. Obviously, the starting point was the thermal performance, the U value. So with the U value, the lower the U value, the better. So looking at all the different options here. So we've got Ideal Combi Velvac from outward opening windows, and then there's Ideal Combi Futura +1 Velvac, as well as Schuko sliding doors. So yes, in terms of U value, the inward opening tilt and turn Ideal Combi is probably the best, has the best thermal performance, followed by the Velvac 200E outward opening, as well as, and then followed by the Futura Plus outward opening. We've also looked at secure by design. A window is secured by design certified if it meets rigorous standards of enhanced security performance as defined by the police. So obviously, we're looking to install. Our preference would be to install for windows that meet that requirements to be installed. Yes. So in terms of internal finish, the inward opening, the outward opening windows, the outward opening reversible windows, just the first three on your screen, have a timber internal finish because they have composite frames. But and then the Velvac inward opening tilt and turn, which is the Velvac IN, also has a timber finish, but all options we looked at all have aluminium external finish. And then yes, there's a frame thickness. I think most residents expressed the preference for a frame thickness that's similar to the existing. So the thinnest we could find, both Ideal Combi Velvacs, the 53 mil frame thickness. And then the next up is obviously the Schuko sliding, which has a poor thermal performance. And then there's a Velvac, the other Velvac composite frame, which is 93 mil, which is quite chunky. And also we've looked at the cleaning of the windows. You know, residents will be able to clean the outward opening windows, the first two, the ideal can be Futura Plus as well as the Velfac 200E from the inside. I think most residents would prefer to clean their windows from the inside themselves. And then there's the outward opening, outside only cleaning windows, which is the third column there, which is Velfac, as well as the Schuko frames. So, I mean, based on residents' feedback, what you've told us, you know, we would be recommending two options, which is the ideal can be Futura Plus, the outward opening reversible window, as well as the ideal can be Futura Plus one, which is the inward opening tilt and turn window. All windows can have a variety of finishes, including natural anodized to match the existing frames. We'll be asking residents to choose their preferred finish. Next slide, please. So these are the two options. They both have great thermal performance, you know, low U value, 0.87 and 0.82. They're both secured by design. One is outward opening reversible window. The other is inward opening tilt and turn. One is fully, you know, aluminium frame, aluminium on the inside and on the outside. The outward opening window, the ideal can be is timber on the inside and aluminium on the outside. They're quite slim and very similar to the existing frame. In fact, we've piloted these windows in Form 1 testing, so if you'd like to view them and test them, we'll be inviting you to come and see the windows. And both, it's possible, residents can clean both windows from the inside of their flats. So yes, we'll be writing to you. I think actually a letter's gone out to residents inviting you to 411, and there's also a video, an invite on the Instagram page. Next slide. So similar to the windows, we've looked at different options for the doors. We've looked at aluminium framed system. We've looked at composite, following feedback from phase 2. We've looked at the thermal performance secured by design and the internal finish, the external finish. We've piloted the Velfac 200E, which is the second sliding door on the slide. In 4.1 testing, so residents can come and view and test. It's not as, when it comes to thermal performance, the U value, it's not as great as the ideal Kumbi frame. Both ideal Kumbi and Velfac are secured by design. We are not really looking at Schuko and the Rayner's options, and that's because the thermal performance is not great at all. The U values are quite high, as you can see, average to poor. So in terms of internal finish, similar to the windows, because the ideal Kumbi and Velfac are both composite frames, the internal finish, the internal material, frame material will be timber and the external will be aluminium. And frame thickness for the ideal Kumbi option is 78 mil, which is quite, you know, it's not too bad, but it's quite thick. And then there's the 53 mil for the Velfac sliding door is 53 mil thick, which is similar to the existing sliding doors. And yes, these are available in different finishes and different colors. The Velfac option is what we've installed in 411. We'll be inviting you to come and see and test. It has a floating frame. The ideal Kumbi has a fixed fixed frame in the middle, which I think the Velfac is better because it just gives a clear, nice view towards the courtyard space. So we are recommending the first two options, the ideal Kumbi frame IC as well as the Velfac 200E. And we are actually looking to pilot the ideal Kumbi in another flat. So we will be writing to you about that sometime soon. So next slide, please. So yeah, some of you have balconies that have hinged doors. We've looked at options for that as well. There's the ideal Kumbi Futura Plus, which is hinged and it opens out outwards. And then Ideal can be Futura Plus, which is inward opening, tilt and turn, and then there's the Velfac 200E, which is also outward opening, similar to the first Ideal can be Futura. We're looking to pilot all three soon, and we'll be writing to you about that. We've also, all three are secured by design, and then they're also available in different finishes and different colors. We'll be asking you to choose. So yes, the survey we've sent out, you will, one of the questions is for you to choose one of these three doors. So next slide, please. So yes, in terms of the colors and the frame and window finish, the external paint finishes options we're looking at, I think most residents have said they would prefer color that's similar, externally, well, color that's similar to the existing. We've looked at the anodized aluminium, there's basalt gray, RAL 7012, and then there's a signal gray, which is sort of light gray RAL color. And those are, we've piloted all three in 411. So please come to 411 and come and see the windows and you know, tell us what you think. So for the tilt and turn window, because this is an aluminium frame window, internal and external, it's possible to have, you know, an anodized, you know, internal finish. And then internally, it can also be painted in any RAL color. I think we would be recommending RAL white and, you know, RAL 90 and 9010. There's also dark gray, basalt gray, and signal gray. So yeah, these are the colors that are possible. And we'll be asking you to tell us what you think. And so this is part of the survey. Next slide, please. So yes, this is about the balcony improvement works. The improvement works to your balconies comprises of three main areas. There's the surface insulation and finish, and that's to reduce heat loss from the internal space above the balcony space. So the surface is the ceiling of this balcony space in the image. And then there's the balcony floor insulation and finish to reduce heat loss from the internal space below the balcony space, and also to improve waterproofing of that balcony. And because we're going to be installing new waterproofing, new insulation in the floor, it means the deck is going to rise, and then we then need to introduce new railings, which is slightly higher for health and safety reasons. So yeah, we're also looking at new railings and potentially new planters. So all three areas of improvements have been carried out in the 411 pilot flat to test the impact on the floor to ceiling height, so residents can see the impact on their space. So yes, I mean, yeah, this is, so the 3D image on the right-hand side is of the balcony deck insulation and finish. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a waterproofing layer installed in there to eliminate long-term issues with leaks and reduce maintenance needs. Next slide, please. So for the balcony floor insulation, we've looked at glass foam options. We've looked at mineral wool insulation. The glass foam, which is the first two, are rigid, non-combustible insulation made from recycled glass and silica, while the mineral wool insulation is flexible, it's soft, and made from spun rock fiber. We've assessed all four options, so looking at the thermal performance, fire rating, the required fall. So some systems would need to be sloped to allow water runoff, and this reduces the amount of space to put insulation in. We've also looked at the cost. We've looked at the structural capacity of each product. So all four have the same U value. And in terms of fire rating, the RadMat is the best, as both, the RadMat option is the best, as both the insulation as well as the facing of the insulation is A1 fire rated. The remaining three are also A1. The actual insulation is A1 rated, but the facing is an E rate. It's an E rated material. So the RadMat system does not need to be sloped and therefore has a 0.4, although it's more expensive compared to the other options. And yes, that's why we've piloted this in Form 1 testing, and it's the recommended option. And we haven't asked residents to choose, because I think it's clear from the fire rating that the RADMAT is the one to go for. So this is what we've installed in Form 1.1. Next slide, please. So in terms of the finishes, there are two main options. There's aluminium decking or pavers. So the finishing will go on top of the insulation I mentioned earlier, as well as the waterproofing, of course. The pavers can be installed either on a framed system or on pedestals. The insulation method for the paver impacts on the overall depth of the build-up of the balcony material. And both pedestal and frame sort of create an open system which will have like a 2 to 5 millimeter gap between the pavers. Although both systems are A1 or A2 rated, and the frame system is A2 rated and the paver is A1 rated. But the paver finish is durable. I mean, although it has limited number of colors and textures, but if we're thinking long term, it's really durable compared to the aluminium decking. Although there are benefits to the aluminium decking in the sense that it has a smaller build-up, which is 53 mil. It is A1 rated. So, and it also has it has a closed system, so there are no gaps between each aluminium deck. There's the strips. And it's for that reason, it's the recommended option. This is what we've piloted in Form 1 Testerton. It's available in different RAL colors. The RAL colors we're suggesting, and we've asked residents to choose from, the sort of a brownish RAL colors is RAL 8019, and then there's a dark gray color. So the brown color would work well, would look nice next to the existing brickwork. The dark gray, it really depends on the color of the balcony doors and the windows. I think that would look nice next to another sort of like dark gray external balcony door finish. So that's RAL 7016, and another option is the light gray RAL 7040, which would look nice next to anodized finish for the external doors, or a light gray finish. So yes, we've installed the aluminium decking in 411. But we also understand that some residents might prefer pavers. So in the survey, you'll be able to choose between pavers and aluminium decking and your preferred color. Next slide, please. So to reduce heat loss from the buildings, the existing balcony ceilings, as I mentioned earlier, need to be insulated with A1 or A2 rated non-combustible insulation. We've developed two options for the facing of for the facing material, which protects the insulation. There's glass reinforced concrete, otherwise known as GRC. And then another option is the mineral render, also non-combustible. It's A2, both are A2 non-combustible materials. So in terms of pros and cons, the GRC is more robust. It's a hard-wearing finish. It has a similar appearance to the existing concrete of the blocks. The existing concrete is the horizontal bands, which is the gray bands you see on the blocks. It's also easy to clean. The cons of that is it has a larger heat loss compared to the render option. So yeah, the render option has a better heat loss, reduces heat loss. Cons of render, it stains easily. It's less robust when compared to GRC. It has a similar finish to the balcony ceilings, the existing balcony ceilings. And I think what we're looking to do is to improve the look of your blocks and, of course, the balcony space. Next slide, please. So yeah, the testing pilot is now nearing completion. In the flats, we've piloted a full range of refurbishment works, thermal improvement, and fire safety works that we're exploring for your homes. So this includes new windows, as I mentioned earlier. So you can see the image on the right-hand side. We've installed the dark grey external finish color, and then we've also installed a light grey option, and there's the anodized as well. We've also installed inward opening tilt and turn windows, outward opening reversible windows. And we've also a new MVHR system, new mechanical ventilation system, which Terry presented earlier. The balcony improvement works I mentioned earlier about the new insulation to the soffit, as well as the new decking, the aluminium decking, as well as new railings and planter. That's also been installed. We've also installed interwall insulation, which is great, and carried out a number of acoustic improvements. So residents will be invited to come and view, test all the different things with, all the measures we've installed, and provide some feedback. Next slide, please. So this is an interior CGI of the pilot flat looking towards the courtyard space. So you can see the improvement works to the balcony space. So that's the Velfac sliding door I mentioned. This is the fluting sliding door frame. You can see the planters, the railings, the new decking, as well as the new soffit. Next slide. So yeah, these are just images, real life examples of proposed improvement measures. These are images, photos of completed void flats, Lancaster West, and we'll be invited, as I said, we'll be inviting you to come and see the flats. I think it's in November, so we'll be writing to you. So next slide. So I will now hand over to James, who will be presenting the insulation strategy for your blocks.
Thank you, Boomy. Some really exciting design options emerging there. So we move on to the first slide, please, Maria. I will set the scene in terms of the external wall insulation and indeed an insulation strategy for the blocks. I'll start with an explanation of why this is particularly complicated for the 3 walkways compared to the other blocks that we manage on the estate. And it's essentially to do with what's called the form factor of the building. So essentially, rather than one square or rectangular facade, we have a number of protruding and recessed balconies and facades to your individual homes. And essentially, that creates a greater surface area for heat to escape. Also, there are implications when you're looking at installing an external wall insulation on your windows, your balcony doors, and also just in terms of the logistics of ensuring that the EWI system can be installed safely in a way that it is going to last the 20 or 30 years that we intend it to. So as we recapped earlier in the webinar, residents were slightly more in favour of external wall insulation than internal wall insulation, and so we've been focusing on what we need to install. And I'm going to talk in a minute about a minimum approach to external wall insulation and a maximum approach as well. But before I do, I just want to outline that in the case of the walkways, because as many of you know, when the walkways were originally built, they were open air on the inside, the common areas where you will access your homes. And since then, the roof and light wells have been put on the top. When we think about an installation strategy, it's absolutely crucial that we consider that communal area as well, because at the moment, heat is escaping from your homes into that common area. Now, we're pretty sure that part of that strategy will be to ensure that the common area becomes what we call a warm atrium space, or a series of warm atria. What that essentially means is, in terms of the new roof and the AOVs, the things that open and close, or are supposed to anyway, when it rains, they will be to a standard, which means that we will dramatically reduce the amount of heat that is lost from those, particularly in winter. So it also means that it's much more pleasant to walk around if you're visiting neighbours in the block moving forwards as well. So it's still the case that we may need wall insulation or cavity wall insulation on some of those inward facing walls, but by taking an approach where we assume that warm atria is in place, that reduces the level of disturbance and disruption. So we move on to the next slide, please, Maria. I will start to talk about some of the intricacies. So this is very much to explain the complexity in a little bit more detail. So those of you that have a hinge door onto a balcony, for those of you that have a balcony, what this slide does is show that in terms of what we call the build-up of any external wall insulation, how it can impact on the floor space available to you, and also in terms of the size of the door. So on the left, you've got your existing balcony space, and on the right, you've got a potential balcony space. And as you can see there are implications in terms of the doors, in terms of the windows, the amount of space that you've got there. So that's one of the things we are considering when we look at what options we may provide. Likelihood is in early spring 2023. Next slide, please, Maria. So this is the same from another perspective. So you can see here that when we're doing the internal refurbishment, there is an option that we provide internal wall insulation on what in this particular property is a bedroom. For some of you, it would be a lounge. And so you can see here that a hybrid approach is probably the best way that we can maximise the benefits of wall insulation, but minimise the downsides to both external wall insulation and also internal wall insulation. So this just shows how there are options where we don't end up encroaching on the floor space of the balcony. And I think it's highly likely that whatever the final technical design is, that it will be some form of hybrid system where we look to use both approaches. Next slide, please, Maria. So what does that mean? So we've definitely identified there is a need for what we call a minimum external wall insulation approach, and I'll go into some detail in a moment about where that would apply. And what that does is substantially reduce the current heat demand. And so for you, it means more comfortable homes. And it also means substantially lower energy bills, which is something that all of us are increasingly concerned about. It does mean a range of intricacies, certainly upgrades on certain elements, such as the entrances, which are currently open air in terms of that middle picture we're looking at there from the garden area. But it does mean that we would be able to retain, if residents wish to, the existing brick facade. But equally, if people wanted to change the facade with render, paint, and so on, that is something that we could look to do. So we're weighing up that minimum external wall insulation approach, and I'll give a bit more detail about that in a moment, as well as what's called a maximum external wall insulation approach. Now, based on the examples I've just given, it's highly unlikely that it would be technically feasible to get anywhere near 100% coverage from external wall insulation system. That's not to say that if residents strongly wanted to change the entire character of the building, we wouldn't be able to do so, but it would mean that we wouldn't be relying on external wall insulation in order to do it. In the same way that Boomy's just set out the use of A1, A2 non-combustible insulation in the balconies, you're getting a build-up there. Similarly, all external wall insulation systems, particularly those that are non-combustible, do mean quite a thick build-up on the outside of your building. So again, when we're looking at the benefits of maximum external wall insulation on different aspects of the building, we'll weigh up the pros and cons in terms of the benefits to residents in applying it without it encroaching onto balcony areas in particular, and also reducing the size of your windows. And if we move on to the next slide, please, Maria, we detail in a little bit more visually in terms of the differences that we're looking at. So on the left there, you can see the existing heat demand. The measure there is 181 kilowatt hours per metre squared per year. That's a primary heat energy that's needed to keep the property warm. So that outer large circle there is that existing heat demand in terms of what you're all living in at the moment. So a minimum approach to external wall insulation, it would be about 30%, and I'll show you in a moment which parts of the building we would need to apply that to. Substantially reduces that already. So that means lower heating bills. And it does mean that we're well within the target heat demand of 50 kilowatt hours, which is a social housing decarbonisation fund target that we're looking to reach. Now, that said, if we were to look at maximising the use of external wall insulation and potentially providing that new facade, we think that it would be between 50 and 75% of the building. And certainly in around 3 months' time, we should be in a place to show you exactly what that would look like in a bit more detail. Other than the change to the aesthetic of the building, that would also mean even further reduction in terms of heating bills. The difference is nowhere near the difference between existing heat demand and that minimum approach, but it does maximise the benefit and the opportunity for us to ensure that moving forwards, heat demand is as low as it can be, which keeps your bills also as low as they can be. It also means the most dramatic and potentially most positive impact from an aesthetic point of view on the outside character of your building, which we're going to talk about in a moment. Next slide, please, Maria. So, in terms of what the different aspects of external wall insulation might look like, so we're showing here both ends of the walkway. So from the Grenfell Walk entrance on the right-hand side there, and from the southern angle, where there currently isn't entrances, but to give you a view of what we call the gable ends of your blocks. So both ends of the blocks are definitely areas of substantial heat loss. And so even the minimum programme, we would be looking to install external wall insulation. You can see there, it dramatically changes the current view of the building, makes a real statement, and crucially will substantially reduce the heat loss that's currently coming out of those of you that are living in the homes at the end of both walkways. So the northern and southern ends of the building are something, whether the minimum or maximum option is chosen, we would be looking to install external wall insulation. Next slide, please, Maria. Secondly, we have the entrances, sometimes referred to as the courtyard and street entrances, which is where you come in and out of your homes. Again, these are an area of substantial heat loss. We've had a lot of feedback from residents. They don't particularly like the look and feel of the entrances, and a lot of feedback that we've had as well around when visitors come, that people don't feel that it sets the best impression in terms of the homes that we're in, which are largely absolutely spectacular homes that many residents have shaped themselves, and obviously we've delivered through the co-design internal refurbishment. So what does this mean in terms of wall insulation? Well, we will be looking at double and triple glazing to those entrances, and we will be looking at high quality external wall insulation to minimise the level of heat loss. And you can see there potentially the difference between some of those entrances, particularly the bottom right there. You can see the new entrance that could potentially be installed at Bramley Road there to Hurstway 400s. By the bus stop currently. So you can see we've got opportunities to really transform the entrances to the building, and also ensure that fire safety and energy performance are at the heart of that. So again, these proposals are things which, through the minimum or maximum approach to external wall insulation, we would be looking to finalise. Next slide, please, Maria. So for those of you who are living at the top of the building, we've already heard from Boomi in terms of the roof works today and previously. We've obviously got the issue of the external facing walls on your terraces, and indeed the parapet of the roof itself. So that is something that we would be looking to ensure, obviously complements the broader strategy, but we definitely are going to need some form of external wall insulation at that level. And really what we're looking to hear from you is the textures, the look and feel, and the colour schemes that you would like us to consider. So the parapets are also something that are in scope for both options. Next slide, please, Marie. So around the roof lights and upper terraces, you can see there, and a better visual. So again, this question of footprint is something that we need to consider. If we were to apply external wall insulation, it would mean a slight reduction in terms of the floor space. That said, you'd have a substantial improvement in terms of energy performance. And what we're looking to do is to articulate that in a clear way so that residents can understand whether that trade-off is worthwhile. Next slide, please, Maria. So the soffits, as Boomi's talked about already, these are the underside of your balconies. So the underside of your balconies, for those that have one, is obviously the floor of the property above, broadly speaking, or in some cases there are balconies upon balconies. But here on the walkways, the way it's been designed, we do have a lot of balconies where essentially you're underneath someone's floor. So that's another area of heat loss. So we would be looking at installing external wall insulation to that as well. And that may well be something that we could do, given where it is, that could be to a different colour scheme, if you will, than the actual vertical facades of the building, which we'll show you in a moment. Next slide, please, Maria. So another area where it's highly likely we'll be installing external wall insulation is for those of you that are in the maisonettes that go down as you go into them. So split level maisonettes above garages or above baseline studios for those of you who are in Barandon Walk. So we're almost certainly looking at installing external wall insulation there. Substantial heat loss for those properties is coming from there, particularly the cold spaces in terms of the garages under Hurstway and Testerton Walk. So again, whether it's a minimum or maximum approach, this is certainly an area where we'll be looking to install wall insulation. Next slide, please, Maria. So a view here in a bit more detail of the difference you can see between retaining the existing facade, perhaps cleaning the brickwork up, perhaps cleaning the concrete slab up, complemented there with what it could look like to transform the external facade here using the gable ends. It by no means that we would have the same textures. It doesn't mean we necessarily have to have glass reinforced cement, concrete, or whether we need to have brick facades or renders. There are a range of different options. So what we're looking for you to do today is just tell us whether you would like to see a minimum approach to an external wall system or a maximum approach. And then we'll also ask you this particular colour schemes and particular textures you would like us to consider in terms of those final designs. So what we're not doing in phase 2 is asking you to pick the absolute final design, but we've produced these images in order to help to get residents to understand the opportunity that we have visually, as well as in terms of improving energy performance. Next slide, please, Maria. So again, a larger picture of what it could look like, just in terms of highlighting in a buff pink colour here, the areas that we would be looking to certainly install external wall insulation. And we are currently also looking at some of those protruding areas, what it could look like to install an external wall insulation system there. Now, there is the opportunity if residents want to keep the brick heritage of the building, which has certainly been the case on other blocks on the estate, there is absolutely the opportunity to install brick facades to go alongside the GRC rendered elements of the EWI system as well. And if you come along to Unit 29 of Baseline Studios, you'll be able to see what that looks like. And they look identical to bricks, but it does give the opportunity to freshen up the look. And as you can imagine there are opportunities to do that without it impacting on the sides of the windows, particularly for those elements of people's homes that protrude out. In terms of the recessed balconies and households, they're the areas where we do need to consider that if we install an external wooden insulation into those flank walls going in towards the recesses, that would have a negative impact in terms of the size of your windows would reduce very slightly. Next slide, please, Maria. So again, a zoomed in picture of the Grenfell Walk approach, the 300 entrances in terms of the opportunity there. And what you can see is we've highlighted areas which we could potentially install external wall insulation on the ends there. And as you can see there, we've started to play around with what that might look like in terms of changing the character and facade of the building as well. Next slide, please. So moving into the areas where we will be asking you to make a decision. So we've provided a range of CGIs just to try and create an idea of what the opportunities are. And we'll be asking you to help us select colour schemes and preferred textures. So here we have a grey and white and cream range of textures and colours. So there's all sorts of options available, which you can come along to Unit 29 and have a look at in terms of smooth textures, in terms of ornate organic textures, or indeed matte textures as well. And this facade would be what goes over the A1 entirely non-combustible insulation that we would be looking to install where we do install external wall insulation. Next slide, please, Maria. Similarly, here's the red swatches in terms of red terracotta and sandstone approaches. probably closest to some of the existing elements and brickwork Boom has alluded to in terms of the balcony. So again, we will be asking you to give a preference in terms of whether you like this particular colour scheme or not. And finally, next slide, please, Maria. We have the green swatches. So again, there's an opportunity here to look at quite a stark, different look. We've had a number of residents ask for something that is substantially different. So we did want to offer these options as well. And you can come along and see the samples of what we're producing. I think there's a slide in a moment which shows you that. Next slide, please, Maria. So if you come along to the showroom, you'll be able to see firsthand the different colours that are available and the different textures that are available, and we'll be asking residents to rank these 3 swatches in order. You'll be able to provide verbatim feedback as well. So if people say, no, I want it to look almost exactly as it does now, that's something you can tell us as well. But we just want to use this as an opportunity to get a steer, because it means we can move much more quickly to making a final decision if we broadly know what residents would like to see, in this case, in terms of colours. And the next slide, please, Maria. How fine in terms of texture. So these are pictures of some bespoke samples that we've had put together, especially for Walkways residents to come along and look at and touch. So you're more than welcome to come along to Unit 29 any time between 10 and 4 o'clock and have a look firsthand at what some of these textures might look like. But I do want to express that these textures would be absolutely accents to the overall system. So it isn't the case that you would have an entire wall that would have these textures and colours necessarily, but in terms of accentuating at points like the entrances, at points like the parapet, if you would like a certain aesthetic, there's every opportunity to transform or enhance the existing Walkways appearance. And we're really looking forward to hearing your views when you fill in the survey. Boom.
Thanks, James. We are now going to look at the proposed works to the common areas of your blocks. Next slide, please. So each walkway block has a long central communal space running the length of each building, which is highlighted in the diagram in yellow. Currently, this space is semi-external. Rain and wind does not enter, but warm air can escape easily. So to keep the space warm, the proposal is to fully enclose it, so that it's treated as an internal space. This is similar to how a corridor in a typical apartment building is enveloped by the homes around it. But you do not need to, it wouldn't need to be heated, as it will be passively heated through upgrades to the thermal fabric, such as replacement of the existing roof lights and new entrances. The roof lights and entrances will be designed to keep the heat in during the winter. In summer, the roof lights will be automatically will automatically open to naturally ventilate the communal space if it becomes too hot, or if the roof lights if it detects smoke. So the benefits of enclosing the communal space is that we do not need to insulate the walls of your homes that face into this space. This means noise and disruption from installing the insulation here is minimized, although works will be required to upgrade the roof lights and install new services within the space. Next slide, please. In hot weather, the communal space will be passively ventilated through the new AVs at entrances and roof lights, as I mentioned earlier. The cross ventilation, which currently happens through flats. So you have the windows that face onto the courtyard spaces, and then there's the atrium windows that face the communal space. So that cross ventilation wouldn't be possible, would no longer be possible, as the windows, the atrium windows will not be openable due to fire safety reasons. They're going to be replaced with fixed glazing, fixed fire rated glazing. And this is where the new mechanical ventilation Terry mentioned earlier comes in. And the ventilation of your flats, will be achieved through natural ventilation through open windows, as well as mechanical ventilation through the installed, new ventilation system, which could be mechanical extra ventilation or the MVHR system. Next slide, please. So the design and the look of the common areas currently kind of have an institutional appearance, and it's the material finishes is the palette's kind of dated and has this industrial lighting, and the industrial lighting within the space further emphasize this. With residents' input, there is an opportunity to transform the appearance of the common areas through the upgrade of material finishes to walls, to the floors, to the railings. There's an opportunity to install new lighting, new modern lighting, energy efficient lighting, of course. And the proposed strategy for new materials in the common areas is to achieve a clean, lively, and uncluttered appearance. Existing high quality and robust materials will be reused where possible, and new materials will be introduced which would match this durability and quality. So we are going to be piloting this improvement work to the communal space in Testerton Walk, which Alekia will now talk through. So I'll now hand over to Alekia to run through the Testerton Walk communal upgrade and lighting pilot. Alekia.
So we will be undertaking some improvements to the communal areas, as Bunmi mentioned. So over the coming months, we aim to trial this first in the south end of Testerton Walk. Would you mind going back to the previous slide, please, Maria? So the upgrades will mainly involve 5 main elements, and after which we will be inviting residents to provide feedback to us. These elements have been selected based on previous resident engagements and residents' top priorities. So for walls, we will be painting a portion of the walls in white color and also be cleaning them with specialist cleaning. So this is to provide a cleaner and brighter atmosphere in the communal areas. The existing flooring is made up of terracotta tiles, so this will also be cleaned using a specialist cleaner, and this will also provide us an option to trial new flooring materials. We'll be painting the railings in bronze color. So this will create a brighter look in the communal areas. Along with the flooring, the stairs also will be cleaned and repainted because they have been worn over across the years and can look dirty. A new service riser cupboard is also being included as a part of the walkways. So this is to ensure various cable work and piping go into this cupboard. Can you go to the next slide, please, Maria? So as you can see in the images, the image on the left shows how Testerton Walk looks like currently, while the image on the right shows how it will look like after the proposed communal upgrades are done. So as mentioned earlier, the wall tiles will be painted in white. The flooring and the entrance mat will be replaced with the slip-resistant flooring, which I'll talk about in detail in the next few slides. The railings will be painted in bronze, and the brickwork is going to be painted in white only on one side of the wall. And we are also going to trial new strip lighting test. Can you please go to the next slide, Maria? So good quality lighting and well-designed lighting fixtures always improve the sense of a space and also the resident well-being. Energy saving is also a top priority for us at Lanquest. So all the new lighting that we are going to replace it with will be LED lights, which are lights that use a minimal amount of energy to run. So this will also have the option to be dimmed and turned off when not in use, which also again saves energy. So as again you can see in the picture there, the left picture shows how it currently looks like in Testerton Walk at the entrance, while the image on the right is showing a new lighting that we are planning to trial, which is called up and down lighting as a part of this. So these lights create a welcoming atmosphere and they also improve the perception of safety. The up and down lighting will have an LED warm white light at the entrance that can also be dimmed and turned off. And this will create a soft glow, which highlights the wall features. And the same kind of lights will also be used for highlighting the floor and the ceiling. Can we go to the next slide, please, Maria? Thank you. This is a design proposal to upgrade the spaces beneath the skylights. This new lighting is specifically designed keeping the communals in mind. The big bulky lights that are existing will be removed and they'll be replaced with chandeliers. So this will create an elegant look and also give soft lighting features effect to the communal areas. The chandeliers will be of different sizes and they'll be suspended from different heights to create a welcoming design. And also it gives the impression of a bright lit space while not being limited to having glaring light. Can you go to the next slide, please, Maria? This pilot will allow us to test new flooring in the walkway areas. So this is divided into broadly 3 main types. So as I mentioned earlier, the existing terracotta flooring will be deep cleaned using a specialist cleaner, which will give a brighter look. The entrance mat and the flooring is going to be replaced with so the existing flooring is lino flooring, and we have explored various options to trial new flooring. So one of the options that will be replaced with is called vinyl flooring, which will give a wood effect, and that is going to be laid in a herringbone pattern. So the advantage of having this flooring is it is made out of 100% renewable electrical energy, which makes it an energy efficient material. Wherever the skylights are present in the walkways, so this is where the bright light from the outside will be entering into the walkways. So we think it's a really good idea to trial the new vinyl flooring, which is patterned. So that will create an alluring look to the walkways. And also this material is also going to be made out of 100% renewable electrical energy, again, making it an energy efficient material. And it also helps reduce noise in the communal areas because it is a noise absorbing material. Can we go to the next slide, please, Maria? As part of the upgrade works, we are also constructing a new service riser in the walkways. So this will be a temporary mock-up of a new service riser. And this service riser cupboard will contain all the essential service cables, such as the heating, hot water, electrical cables, drinking water, internet, phone, etc. This basically creates a clean look and will tidy everything because it all fits into a neat compartment, and it will also prevent any export services to the outside. And as the existing services are older and they will need replacement, when it's the time to upgrade, this will also provide easy access to all the services in one cupboard. And the service riser cupboard will be located at each light well across the walkways. And this will also be painted in a white and bright color that also helps in reflecting the light that is coming from the skylights above, which also adds brightness to the communal areas. I will now hand over to Bunmi.
Thank you, Aleka. Next slide, please. So we're now going to look at refuse and waste management strategy for the walkways. Next slide. Yeah, so the bin chutes in your blocks currently present, a number of problems. First, obviously, it's a fire safety, it's compromised and requires adaptation. The existing strategy requires costly servicing involving bins being dragged in excess of 250 meters to refuse trucks, which is a really long distance. And there is inadequate separation of refuse. So basically everything that goes down the chute, it's just everything, whether it's recyclable or not, or non-recyclable. So, and this leads to less opportunities for residents to recycle. And also the chute openings do not accommodate larger bin liners, which many residents have raised concerns about. And yes, it's the most commonly used, sort of size. So, and also the chutes account for only 17% of the required bin capacity. And for the whole of the walkways, and due to their limited capacity, additional bins have been provided in communal areas around your blocks. Next slide, please. So yes, the additional bins are on the streets, well, by the streets, the courtyards. Those bins are required to meet capacity for your buildings, and they currently have issues. I mean, it's costly servicing involving bins being dragged in excess of 160 meters to the refuse truck, which is also a long distance. The bins are not enclosed. You can see the image, the third image there, and that attracts vermin such as pigeons, rats, foxes, and many bins are located alongside the buildings, which continue to present, a fire risk. The other issue is, locating bins in streets encourages fly tipping, as shown in the fourth image. Next slide, please. So we've been looking at the future of refuse collection and what options do we have. There is an option to keep the existing internal bin chutes and improve them, or replace them. So replace them with not a new bin chute system. The pros of that is it retains the current travel distance. So you can come out of your flat, go to this bin chute and just, the waste. But obviously the cons of that is it's the maintenance costs. Should anything happen, or maybe, there's a fire safety issue, there's maintenance costs and inadequate separation of refuse and recycling, I mentioned earlier. And there's vermin pests within blocks. And there's also the fly tipping issue, because obviously if we keep the existing bin chutes, and the same number of bin chutes, we will need to keep the courtyard bins as well as the street bins as well. And yeah, so that presents issues, just fly tipping I mentioned earlier, as well as fire safety issues. There is another option to introduce new custom built dedicated courtyard bin enclosures within the courtyard spaces. The benefits of that is it's improved fire safety. So those new enclosures will be secured and would ensure that the enclosures have non-combustible, built of non-combustible materials, and there will be dedicated refuse and recycling bins. So this improves separation of refuse types. Larger bin liners can be accommodated. The con of that is, it would increase travel distance. I mean, if say for example, the bin chutes are removed, we introduce this new custom built bins, then coming out of your flat, you have to walk all the way into the courtyard to dispose of the bins, of the refuse, sorry. And yeah, it would encourage fly tipping as well. It's just things just being dumped around the bin. The other option we've looked at is to have new integrated bin stores adjacent to the upgraded and improved entrances James mentioned earlier. There's so many benefits to this. It's improved fire safety, improves separation of refuse types, removes maintenance costs. Larger bin liners can be accommodated. There will be ease of access to dedicated bin store at the entrance. So this would be secure and would have CCTV. So yeah, there's so many benefits, and the vermin fly tipping issue will be resolved. And although the disadvantage, the con of this is increased travel distance, because you have to walk all the way to the new entrances or where this new dedicated sort of integrated bin stores are located. Next slide, please. So yes, on the refuse strategy I just presented, in the survey, we're going to be asking you about your thoughts on the future of refuse collection. It would be good to hear your thoughts on that, if we should keep the existing bin chutes, improve them, or replace them and introduce new refuse stores, new dedicated bins within the courtyards. So moving on to maximizing fire safety. Next slide. So just going through fire safety strategy for the 3 blocks, the Walkways blocks. what we showed you the last time in phase 1, we've always said fire safety is an essential element of the refurbishment works. And to improve the fire safety of your blocks, we are going to be replacing the roof lights with the integrated automatically opening vents to allow smoke to escape easily in the case of a fire. We will need to install sprinklers in all homes. So yes, there are so many benefits to sprinklers for everyone's safety and protection. All homes we just need to have sprinklers. And also the sprinklers in homes ensures that the communal areas is always safe to move through if people are escaping, escaping, traveling from a fire or an affected flat. And the sprinkler heads will only activate if that particular head is exposed to a real fire. So there won't be any sort of false alarms or false activation. The other fire safety measure we're looking at is installing smoke detectors in all homes and common areas. We've already started doing this as part of the void internal refurb work we're doing. We will be replacing private entrance doors. This has already started. And also we'll be adding new insulation that is only A1, A2 rated, which is the lowest risk material rating under fire regulation. So this applies to all materials that will be installed as part of the refurbishment. We're looking to install A1, A2 non-combustible materials as far as practically possible. Next slide, please. So yes, as I said earlier, it's essential to install sprinklers in all homes. The sprinklers will suppress flames and the spread of smoke and fire from a flat into the communal area. So this is necessary to ensure that the communal area is a safe place to escape through. And this is all incorporated in the smoke modeling we've done, also otherwise known as CFD modeling, to ensure fire safety. And we've also identified the need to upgrade the fire detection system, so new electrical control system. And so fire detection and alarms within all flats will be installed to category LD3, and the refurbishment homes would be upgraded to LD1 systems, which includes detectors in all rooms except low-risk rooms such as bathrooms. Next slide, please. So new front entrance doors, we are reviewing. So we've carried out a CFD model, which is done by which is all done by the fire safety consultants. And based on the outcome of that process, we've been reviewing the potential needs to relocate some front entrances in the walkways to improve safety and create additional space in people's homes. And there may be an opportunity to upgrade them from the current model. Therefore, we would be keen to understand your views on the approach we need to take. This is an image of the possible fire door design. It's available in the 5 different colors you see on your screen. This is also in the survey, so we would like to hear your thoughts on preferred color for the front entrance door. So all new doors would be fire resistant, 30 minutes as a minimum. The doors would be secured by design and would improve thermal performance. So we would also look for closers to be installed on the outside to minimize disruption for periodic checks for the doors. So yes, 5 colors within the survey. Let us know your thoughts on this. Next slide, please. So yes, as I mentioned earlier, we will need to replace the atrium glazing with fire-rated fixed glazing. The windows currently have fire curtains, as you can see in the image on the left-hand side. And the benefit of this is it protects the communal space, which is highlighted in the red box. So the fire curtains are actually more of a temporary measure to protect the communal space in the event of a fire. A permanent solution would be the replacement of the fire curtains with the fire-rated glazing, which is the image on the right-hand side, and which would look really, really nice. So this means all new kitchens and bathrooms that have the windows will have new ventilation system. Apart from enhancing the fire safety, there are other benefits to installing the new windows, including improved acoustics. It's also protecting your homes from noise from the communal spaces, and obviously it has an improved aesthetic to the communal areas as well as your homes. Next slide, please. So yes, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be replacing those windows. They're now going to be fixed. New ventilation system would need to be installed, either MVHR or MEV. I won't go into too much detail on this because I think Terry covered this so well. But I think the point we're trying to get across here is there's going to be the existing windows are going to be replaced with fixed windows, no longer openable, and hence new ventilation system will be required. Next slide, please. So all the communal space, as well as the existing stair cores, need to be compartmentalized and ventilated to create a safe space for firefighting as well as escape in the event of a fire. So the list on the left-hand side of this slide is basically all of the work involved in achieving that. Is the automatically opening vents, which would provide the ventilation of that space. There's a fireproof glazing, because that's going to be fire rated now, so that contributes to compartmentalizing that communal space. I also mentioned the fireproof entrance doors to the homes. That also contributes to compartmentalizing that space. And then there's a bin chute. So obviously it would be great to hear your feedback as part of this phase 2 process on bin chutes. The removal of the bin chutes improves fire safety, but we also know that some residents are concerned about travel distances, and so I think we would be good to just discuss bin chutes with residents, with you first, and then we can make a decision on the future of refuse collection and what that means for fire safety. Next slide, please. So in addition to the measures I mentioned earlier, we would be, to improve fire safety, we would be looking at improving signage and wayfinding to ensure quick and easy navigation for both escape in the event of a fire and as well as the fire team if they visit the blocks, they need to visit the blocks. And there's also reducing combustible materials to avoid spread of fire, example, new rock wool insulation. So we will be looking to install A1, A2 non-combustible materials where it's practical to do so, and as far as practically possible. And we're also looking at emergency lighting to ensure visibility in the event that normal lighting fails. There's also fire detection in the communal space, which is essential. We've talked about fire detection within the flats, but also fire detection within the communal space. Next slide, please. So yes, I mentioned earlier that the new AVs would provide summertime cooling as well as smoke, would allow smoke to be ventilated should the AVs be activated in the event of a fire. So there is so within each roof light, so yes, each roof light will be openable during the summer months to help cool down the atrial space. This would help combat overheating. And in addition to that, shading devices will help, avoid direct sunlight, which could cause unwanted heat gain. So this is a diagram just describing that process. Solar shading on one side and openable, openable AUVs during summertime. Next slide, please. Yes, so keeping HO space empty is essential part of the fire strategy of the 3 blocks. Currently, bicycles, prams, boxes sometimes are stored by residents in the communal areas. This is a fire safety issue, as the communal areas need to be empty and to ensure that their residents can escape safely through the space in the event of an emergency. So to address this issue, the proposed design is to provide new dedicated storage rooms at the corner entrances of Barandon and Hurstway Walk. And so yes, it would be located near the entrances for convenient use, and residents will be able to store bikes, prams, and other things. So we will be providing more information about this in phase 2 of the co-design, on phase 3 of the co-design process. Next slide, please. So yes, as I mentioned earlier, I won't go into too much detail on this. Yes, we need to adapt the existing refuse strategy to improve fire safety. We could upgrade the existing bin chutes and improve them, or remove the existing bin chutes, which would be great, and also remove them and introduce new dedicated refuse stores. That's the recommended option, because it means, the fire is presented, but the presence of the refuse chutes is eliminated, and we can have new dedicated refuse stores, which not only addresses the fire safety issue, but also the refuse collection strategy, the future refuse collection for the walkways. So it would be great to hear residents' thoughts on the future of the refuse strategy for the walkways. Next slide. We've also looked at improving access and means of firefighting. So access for fire trucks, easy access to the blocks. We've talked about signage within the communal areas, which would help firefighters to be able to make it easier for them to navigate, the communal spaces, and as well as where the flats, the way they're configured. But also, we've also looked at this externally. So designated areas for fire vehicle access are recommended at both corners of Hurstway and Barandon Walk. And in addition, 2 vehicle bays are provided along Whitchurch Road near the ramped entrance at the southern end of the blocks. The ordered areas of Grenfell Walk adjacent to the service road below cannot be relied upon for access. So we've been looking at that with a fire engineer, and we'll feedback more on this in phase 3 of the co-design process. We've also looked at the distance to entrances. We wrote to you about dry risers, upgrading the existing dry risers, and there was an engagement event held recently to update you on what's going on with that. So RBKC, the plan is to carry out the installation of the new dry riser system very soon. It's likely going to be starting early next year on all levels of the walkways, which would assist firefighters in tackling a fire in the likely events of one occurring. So yeah, we will provide more information on dry riser, installation of dry riser in due course. Next slide. We'll now hand over to Maria to talk about the survey.
Thank you, Bumi. So now I will explain what you can do to let us know your choices and preferences. So we have put in place different methods to collect feedback. The first one being a paper survey. All residents will receive a copy of the survey sent by post, and you can return it to Unit 26. There is a dedicated silver survey box that you can put it into. The second option is an online survey. If you have signed up to our e-newsletter that covers the progress of the project and is specific by block, you will automatically receive an online survey. But you can also scan any of the QR codes that we have presented throughout the presentation, and you will get the link direct to the survey. We will also publish these in booklets, posters, and letters. So please let us know if you haven't received any. And finally, we can text or send a WhatsApp a WhatsApp message to a group to you if you just contact the number that shows on the slide 07814608999, and we will send you the link. We are happy if you have any further queries and provide guidance and support as needed. Please remember the deadline for the survey is midnight Sunday, 20th of November. And please, if you would like to see any of the samples that we have presented throughout the presentation, come to Baseline. There's a specific showroom in Unit 29 that will show all the things that we have discussed so far. Finally, here's a QR code I have mentioned before for the e-newsletter. Again, I think it covers a lot of like what the project involves and things that are happening in your community, so it's worth checking out. That's all. Thank you for listening this far. I hope everything that we said so far is clear and provides some guidance of what we are currently doing.
Thank you.
Although it was a long presentation. Yeah, thank you for attention.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mary. And thanks all. Cheers. Bye.